Now I think this might help you as well. And I'm hoping, I mean, it's my instincts kicking in a little bit. I'm hoping because I know how powerful niching down is, or finding that vertical, or finding that thing that, that you can attract the audience that you want to attract because you're narrow enough. People know what to expect. I'm hoping that that will help because now you'll know when I tune into season 2 of The Builders, we're going to be talking about building something. And I hope that a lot of you, like me, enjoy listening to how people build things. Before we jump into this episode, please subscribe to this podcast, hit that notification bell if you're on YouTube, and after a listen, please give us a thumbs up, like, and share, if we've earned it. With your help, we can reach more people and deliver these valuable From the Trenches lessons to those that need it. Enjoy the episode. Hello, everybody, and welcome to another The Builders. Today, it is a solo episode with yours truly, Matt Levenhagen, your host and guest, all rolled into one today. This is episode 200, a very special one, because things are changing slightly. Actually, just maybe we'd just say they're just being enhanced or improved. So, which we hope to do over time, right? In business, in our craft, or whatever it is we do, we want to evolve. We don't want to get stuck in the mud doing the same thing over and over again. But I'm going to get into today, I'm going to kind of do a recap because it's a very special episode. It's 200. We're actually going into a season 2. I did an intro call the other day with somebody to be on this podcast, actually. And she has her own podcast, and they were talking about how they're going into their second season. I'm like, yeah, we're going to go into our second season. She's like, we're going in our second season too, except it's like episode 22 or something like that. And I'm like, well, I mean, our first season was 200. There's no rules. But, well, the funny thing is, and the reason that is because I didn't actually ever plan to have seasons. I always saw other people would do that and stuff. I'm like, I didn't see a real reason for that. And it's like, we've been doing this nonstop for almost 4 years, every week, haven't missed a week. We'll just keep it rolling, until we're at like 5,000 episodes. We're just 1 week after another. But a few months back, I was thinking about this. I'm like, you know what? I think I had just a flash, an idea to how we could kind of narrow what we do a little bit more and maybe just fine tune it and make it an even better show, or just to maybe to define it more. We'll get into all that, but to kind of define it more and have a little bit different of a core, a foundation for every episode. Anyway, we'll get into that. But before we do, but I just thought it was funny because it's like, yeah, 22 seems like that would be a season. It's kind of like, watching your sitcoms and stuff. It's 22, 24, 25, maybe. But 200? I don't even know what season 2 will be. Maybe season 2 will only be 25. Or it could be another 200 or 500. We'll see. I make up my own rules. Like I said, maybe that's why I'm built for this stuff, this entrepreneurial stuff. Anyway, so what I'm going to do today is I want to kind of just give a slight recap of what season 1 was all about, and my kind of takeaways from it. And then we'll talk about what season 2, what's coming, how it's going to be structured, and what my guiding light is, I suppose, and tease a few episodes that are already recorded. So because this is 200, I already have, probably by the time this releases, 5 already lined up for season 2. So we're already in like 204, 205. They're coming. So it's guaranteed. They're out there. On my desktop somewhere. So let's get into it. Let's dive in. Well, first of all, I hope you, the listener, the audience, or maybe you've been a guest on this podcast. I hope you really enjoyed the experience of the last 199, now 200 episodes. It's been a journey. I don't want to go into complete and total detail here on everything that transpired, but because I've probably talked about it off and on through the year for the last, I can say years. It's been almost 4 years. And I could go into that in the whys I did it and all that. I mean, just to kind of recap, my first 30 episodes were just audio. There was no video. And the first 10 were solo. I just wanted to see if I could show up every week, if this was my thing. That's how you do it, right? That's how I do it. I'm going to test some. I'm going to test the waters. Is this right for me? Does this feel right? Do I have what it takes? And then I started, I'm like, well, maybe I could try a guest. Let's see how that works. And now in those days, I'm also just on Zoom. Today I use Riverside, a little bit step up from that, a little bit fancier. But so to do that, though, I invited friends. The first number of them were, a friend in business, some developers that work for me, or, like colleagues in the past or now or whatever. and then what started to happen is I started to meet people, and I got a few people along the way that we were on a call for some other reason, and they hopped on. There was an agency, Jennifer. If you go way back, I think I had done some cold outreach, and we connected, and we started to do some work. We were going to do some work. We have done a little bit of work in the past on projects. And I just mentioned I had a podcast, and she came on my podcast. So some of it was very organic, just came out of nowhere, but then it started to snowball a little bit. I started to get referrals. I'd meet people periodically that would send me guests to have on, people they knew or were working with, even marketers that were trying to get their clients to get more exposure or whatever. And so that type of thing happened. And then agencies find you. There's agencies dedicated to finding podcasts for their clients to get on. That's their whole thing. And so I get random emails introducing me to random people. But also, still referrals. And then we discovered something called Podmatch. I've been a member of Podmatch for a few years, and that's where guests and hosts kind of match up. If you're a guest, you can find podcasts to be on. If you're a podcast, you can find guests that want to be on your podcast. You reach out, you communicate. It's a community. That's been really valuable as well. Kind of so that my whole thing has been just kind of this cauldron of referrals, us seeking, us receiving. We've had a number of guests that have come back multiple times. Like AJ's been here. AJ Saunders has been here like 5 times. Hi, AJ. But we bring them back because there's always more to talk about. I get to the end of a lot of podcasts. I'm like, we could continue this conversation. We didn't even touch on these things that we could talk about. So that's fun too. So it's been that's kind of what it's been like and how it evolved. We've had a lot of different people on this podcast now. I think we've had over 100 guests. Now, I only say over 100 because some come back, and also there's a lot of solos in there. So I still have a mixture. I like to kind of, now my pace is every 4 to 6 weeks, I try to have a solo episode where it's just me coming on and talking about what I'm doing and sharing what I'm doing in the trenches or whatever. But yeah, I've grown. I think I've grown a lot from episode 1. In fact, I know I have. Right? In the beginning, you're not that confident. You don't even know what you're doing. And then as time goes on, like, when I first introduced video, I had one of my guests, actually the founder of Freemius, if you've heard of Freemius, he talked me into video. And so I had to take that leap and gain confidence in that as well. And I had audio problems over time. And for a long time, I wasn't even confident in my tech. I was having problems with my cam or my mic. and over dozens of episodes, but we worked through all those things and we gained confidence. And then from the conversations themselves, knowledge, like that is like, if you're going to do podcasting, and it doesn't have to be business, right? It can be anything. It could be whatever you can dream of, whatever your passion is. It could be gardening, whatever, right? I think those of us that stick with it the longest and learn the most from it, learn the most from it and get the most out of it, are those something you're passionate about. And I've always been passionate about business. I love talking about all aspects of business. It's my thing. So this is a natural fit for me. Or marketing, well, marketing is business, but like I have a marketing background and in digital marketing and stuff, and I can talk about that stuff, but I also have tech and I can talk about those things. I love talking about tech because that's my wheelhouse. But through that, I'm able, the beautiful thing, like if you don't have a podcast and you've thought about having a podcast, one of the beautiful things about having a podcast and having guests, having other experts or, building businesses or doing whatever it is you're doing, you can ask whatever questions you want. You can ask the dumb questions. You can, like you can take the conversation wherever you want that conversation to go. I always joke with my when I'm about to have somebody on as a guest, it's kind of unscripted. I might have a few bullets, but just as a reference. But for the most part, we got kind of at this very simple framework and structure. But I might be listening to you and I hear something and I say something to the effect, what did you just say? What? what was that? And we might go off on this little tangent or a little, side quest to talk about this particular thing. But that's what I love about it. But when you're a podcast host, you can do those things. There's no rules. Maybe that's why I like this so much. I don't like rules. So those are kind of things that I get out of it. The knowledge, the things that I've learned from all the people I've had on this podcast is amazing. The insights, the aha moments, and I'm hoping you as a listener are along for that ride as well. You listen to an episode or a clip we put up on social media and it's like, wow, that's profound. I haven't thought about it that way, or that's motivating, or whatever it is to you, whatever takeaway you get from that. Hopefully it's a positive one and you can take that out into the world and merge it into whatever you're doing and do better things and greater things. And that's the idea here. But it's the same for me. Like I'm running a business, right? So alongside this podcast, actually this podcast is kind of a side gig for me, right? What I spend 95% of my time doing is running an agency, a web design and development agency. And what the benefit of that is I can bake that into my solo episodes and really talk from the trenches from that perspective to small businesses, other agencies out there. It's a small boutique agency. I got a team. I got all the components of a business and I can speak to those things, my experiences. So listening to other guests, I can pick their brain. Maybe I ask the question because it's something I'm dealing with right now and I want to know how you deal with it. So that's fun, And it's also the network effect of this whole thing. Social media, we have a presence on social media and we engage with people on social media. So they might see an episode clip or whole episode or whatever. And it draws in somewhat of an audience there and across the podcast platforms. And, but it's also the guests. And this is something that I think surprised me. I wasn't looking for it when I first started doing this, but I realized it didn't take me that long to realize after having a number of guests, I'm building relationships. These are people I could potentially do business with in the future, or, maybe we have things in common. Maybe we don't. Maybe we just become a friend in business. But that's the amazing thing too. And so things happen behind the scenes with various people I've had on this podcast where we have business conversations off the podcast And maybe we stay in touch over time, and maybe we refer business back and forth. So that's something I wasn't expecting, which it's been a really, really great thing. So those are the things that I've kind of drawn out of it, and hopefully you too. Well, obviously, if you're in the audience and you hear somebody that's really interesting, you're going to go check their stuff out, right? So hopefully that's happened too. you've heard about somebody talking about their services or their product or what they do or the coaching they do, whatever, and you reach out to them through this podcast, and that's great too. So in terms of the first 199 episodes up until this one, we touched on a lot of different topics. So the thing, we're called The Builders. So the idea behind that name in the episode was I'm going to talk to builders. We're all builders of businesses, right? In the business space, right? That's kind of what we're focused on. Entrepreneurs. But it could be building teams, could be building products, services, could be building anything within that. But we didn't really stay on those rails all the time. I had a few life coaches and consultants and people just talking about their passion, which wasn't really something they were building, but it's something they were knowledgeable about. We had, we've talked a lot on soft skills, the mental game mindset. My goodness. And then, of course, your business topics. Like we did get into business topics, scaling, growing what's the difference between scaling and growing? What processes, finance, and then of course, marketing, from networking to copywriting to, how to build traffic. We've had SEO discussions. We've had, you name it. We've had it. We've gone there. And then there's this thread of tech conversations because number one, I love tech. As much as I love business, I'm in tech because I run a web design and development agency. And we do a lot of building stuff on, we're in code. we're building stuff with code. And I'm the whole AI thing is becoming incredible enhancement to our businesses and myself. But we've had, conversations because I do a lot of WordPress. We've had episodes on WordPress. We've had episodes where we've had AI software engineers here talking about what they're building in AI. AI has just been this incredible thing. Not only has it impacted how I even develop the content for these episodes, or the descriptions and things and what I get help with there, but even on the tech side, I'm kind of digress a little bit here, but the other day, the last few days, I have ChatGPT released a feature where it can see into VS Code, which is my code editor, and give me insights about that code or even write code for me. I've had this partner the last few days where I'm building features, improving things, and I'm chatting. I digress. Okay. So things like that, right? We have talked about so many things, like how, how to deal with failure, all the way to, talking about how, what we're building. I even, for a long time too, I was kind of sharing my story as I was building my agency. So that was a big part of it too. Like periodically, especially in the early years, I would have an episode just talking about what Matt's doing, how my business is doing. So we've done all of that stuff. But a few months ago, I think I keep thinking back to this, and I think this is what really sparked it. It's great. I think it's incredible that we've had this huge range of topics, even if we went off the rails quite a bit. It's been fun, and like I said, I enjoy talking about all this stuff. It's tech, business. I'm there. I've loved hearing the stories. A big part of what we do, especially when we have somebody on the first time, is talk about their personal story and journey. Because my thought process there was, I always think every guest that comes, they might be on more than one time. So the first time we're really get to know them, and then we'll talk about their passion, whatever they're doing. And then they can come back and we can really focus in on topics. And we've done that. That's worked really well. But a couple months ago, I had somebody on, and they were talking about the manufacturing process. They were talking about the name of the product is cord brick. And I'm forgetting the person's name off the top of my head. Forgive me. I'm going to look it up right now. I will look up cord, and that should hopefully. This is the beautiful thing about WordPress and search. The search bar. I can go to thebuilders.fm and go to guest bios, our podcast guest, and do a search. I searched for cord, and Nick Barrett came right up. It's a beautiful thing when a website works like that. Anyway, again, I digress. But Nick started talking about the process of developing this physical product. And cord brick is basically a product that it's for your cords, for all your cords, like your phone cords and all that, and to organize them. And it's like a brick that it's a whole thing, right? But he got into the materials of it, like the different phases and how he created it in the beginning, how he had to find a manufacturer, and talked about the actual materials used and what worked and what didn't work and the failures. And that whole process of creating that product, how he went out and validated that idea, took it to took it to flea markets, and then he got feedback and then built it into this whole product. I was so fascinated by that. And that really got me thinking. I said, this is building something. And we're learning the fundamentals of what you went through. And even if you're not going to do that type of thing, I'm not going to go out and build a physical product anytime soon. But I was really fascinated by that story. And I thought, well, what if we focused more on that, on the building, on true builders, right? We love our life coaches. We love our consultants. We love maybe there's a way to weave them still in this new context. But really what I want to do is I want to talk to people that are actually building things and that process. Now I'm going to talk about something called, you've probably heard of first principles. It's an engineering thing. I'm not an engineer. I know very little about engineering, but I hear it thrown around by engineers a lot. I think of it like getting down to the nitty gritty, the nuts and bolts, right? How you built that thing, what lessons we learned through the failures, through the successes, getting really, really down to the root of what you're doing. And so that is going to be part of that new focus. We're going to really get into the mechanics of things, the challenges, the successes, the good, the bad, and the ugly, right? But I, as the host, am going to, and I think I kind of do this already. I will try to slow somebody down and zero in on something particular to doing, or like circle back. Because I really want to know the fundamentals of, what their thought process was, how they came up with that idea. And yeah, so that's the beginning of the framework, right? So I started thinking, well, maybe that's what we focus on, more of that, right? Now, who does this encompass though? That was a physical product, but it doesn't have to be a physical product. It could be digital product, software. It could be any kind of digital solution, right? Services, or any other kind of solution you can think of. It could be almost anything, but it's about the fundamentals of that. It's about how it started, where the idea came from, how it came from, what it came from, and through to the delivery of that, right? So it could be, I'm going to get into some that we've recorded already to kind of give you an idea, a taste of what we're going to be doing. But it could also be just a piece of it. It could be the whole thing. It could be macro. It could micro. And it's funny. It's one of these things when I started developing this idea for season 2, and I talked to my team about it, my person that helps me with the marketing stuff and content and all that, throwing ideas back and forth. And at first it was pretty narrow. I'm like, we're just going to talk about the building of a product or a service or solution, or, like our digital product, physical product, the product itself. And that was the starting idea, right? But as I started getting guests on for season 2, they would start. It was the craziest thing, because it actually stimulated their brains more. It was really fascinating, because when you talk to like another business person or somebody that's, creative or, or whatever, and you start bouncing an idea off them, you can see the gears turning, and they're like, well, I could talk about it this way, or what if I talked about this thing? Because now they're thinking about it in the context of what are they building? So I actually figured out, I'm like, oh, I'm onto something here, because they're thinking about things outside the box, right? They're probably used to going on, podcasts, and they just talking about what they do, talking about their story, right? Maybe it's more broad. Maybe there's curveball questions and there's other, but this was a framework for them to think about things in the context of building. So one of the first episode, the next episode after this, 201, is going to be a guy that has built software. But as we were talking about, he's like, what if I just talk about introducing a feature to existing software and building that? How do you do that? Okay. I'm laid back. Yeah, sure. No, that started to open my mind a little bit. And each time I would talk to a new guest or a new potential guest, it kept opening up. I'm like, oh, it could still be about building. We could still have marketing conversations. We can still have sales conversations. We can still have maybe, a lot of variety in our conversations. But it's about building. I talked to somebody the other day. I don't know if she has actually scheduled it yet, but we got into how they built traffic. Like they went from like 10,000 to like 60,000 in followers in 6 months. How did she build that? You're building something, but she called it. She was like, well, this is what did she call it? Basically some kind of machine, a traffic machine or a follower machine. I don't know. You'll learn if she comes on. But it was a machine. It was like something that was the machine. That was what she built to build this thing. They have some kind of framework, and she doesn't come from marketing, so it's very unique. And that's what we're going to talk about. So, and I'll share some of like I said, some of the ones that are coming up here that we have out of the gates to give you even more insights into that. But the bottom line is, it could still encompass. It could be the product, the manufacturing process, or it could be. We could zero in just in an episode. Maybe the most fascinating part of that process is we just focus in on the idea generation, validating that idea, and all the different mechanics involved with developing something and building something. So, and what's great about this too, so I want to, do I say so a lot? I feel like I say so a lot. A lot of people say I say so a lot. Still, 200 episodes in. So, I have my own products. So I sell WordPress plugins, or try to. But I have a whole thing, like we're working on our 5th plugin. We got 4 released, and you can buy it in a bundle. But each one is this kind of own product that serves a specific need or niche, and then in totality, these are, as a bundle, you could build websites and do, whatever. It's a whole thing. But I build products. I also have services. I build services or have built services. So there's things I build within my own business. So I know that, okay, that every 4 to 6 weeks when I have a solo episode, I can talk about something I built. Or maybe I reach back into the past. And this is something too that I thought, there's so many, and I listen to podcasts and stuff, and you hear a lot about what people are doing today, whatever service product, whatever their expertise is today, we speak to that. I had a gentleman on, this is going to be one of the next coming up podcasts, where we got into what he did 20, 30 years ago, and Matt got us stuck there because I kept asking questions. It was an offline business, and I kept asking questions. So I was so fascinated by that. But part of the reason is because there were lessons. And a lot of what we've done over the decades, colors, if you're, old like me or older, but whatever we've done, we're not just learning the lessons today in this little thing we're doing right now. We might have learned the reason we're doing what we're doing today and why we built something the way we built it today is a lesson we learned 20 years ago. Maybe the reason we deal with people the way we do, maybe the reason we structure our partnerships the way we do, maybe the reason we built a team the way we built it today is because of what we learned 20 years ago. So that's the same thing. It's almost like a first principles. It's like go as far back as you can to find those lessons. And how does that apply today? What can we learn from that? After that episode, it was funny. We're talking afterwards, and he's got his own podcast and stuff too. And so he's not, and he's been on podcasts, and it's like, I never really talked about that stuff. And then it's like, I could come back on and just talk about past businesses. Like, yes, those don't have to be lost in history. We all learn stuff through the years, and we shouldn't lose and forget those lessons. But back to that though, we will continue to have guests, obviously. But I can also still have my solo guests, and I will dig into as I continue to develop our product line and sell stuff and scale that business. Hopefully, that's the goal. That I can pull lessons from that and talk about the nitty gritty of building WordPress plugins if you find that interesting, or features. See, that's the thing too. So even though I can build services, but I'm building things for clients as well. Learning management system. I'm working on one today. I got an LMS. Basically, we're building for somebody. E-commerce stores. I'm always building stuff. That's my whole thing. And I'm building this podcast, hopefully. But and regarding the personal stories, I didn't want to lose this either. I loved the episodes where the whole episode became the personal story. There's a few of those where it was like, we're 45 minutes in, we haven't even gotten to his passion yet. We're still talking about the story. We had a few of those, and I thought that was great. But even the ones that were only 10 minutes, 5 minutes, some people were not there to tell their story. They weren't interested in telling their story. We just wanted to get to what they were doing. Matt's a go with the flow kind of guy though, so we just went with the flow. I'd try to circle back a little bit. We'd get all the way to what they're doing today. And this is just the fun part of being a host. You're like, you want to let them talk, because I know as an audience member for podcasts myself, it's like, I want to hear what they have to say. I don't want to interrupt them. If they're in the flow, let them stay in the flow. And then we'd be all the way, like we're a personal story. And then somehow we're to what they do today. And so I would have to okay, let's circle back. That's the fun of it, right? I want to learn a little bit more about what you did back then, blah blah blah. But the personal stories, so I'm not going to emphasize that as much, but here's the thing. Our anchor is going to be the building, right? But within that, for sure, your personal story or guest personal stories are wrapped into that. It's intertwined. So to understand the decision process, we might have to understand something about them. And we get into that. We're going to get into taco trucks in a second. But I had one of my guests coming up. It was about the food industry, right? And I probably had the most personal share I've had in the 200 episodes I've done now. The most personal share, well, I guess 204 I've recorded ever. Like, it got super personal because she had a very a traumatic thing happen to her, and I related to that in a way. And yeah, but it was, even though we're talking about building what we were building, that story came out of that. It kind of bubbled up to the top. So I still love that idea. I had actually the 199 who I just had on. When I had, what's his name? I've had a lot of guests. Okay. Edwin. When I had Edwin on, I took a moment. He started talking about flying. Like, he has an airplane. Like, I had to know a little bit more about that. It's still got to be a fun experience. And if I hear something crazy or off the wall, I'm going to probably still dive into it a little bit. So hope you don't mind that. But I think that keeps it fun, keeps it a little more organic and a little more entertaining. We can have fun with that stuff. But yeah, so personal stories are going to be still in it. I'm still going to introduce the person, let them talk a little bit about themselves, but we're going to try to get to the core of it pretty quickly. And then, but within that, like I said, if the story matters, we will pull that out as well. We want to get to know people, right? That's part of the human story that we're telling. All behind every product, every service, everything we do in business, there's a human story there. And sometimes that really colors what we do and the things we build. It sounded pretty profound. There's a tagline or something. Anyway, so looking ahead, I wanted to just tease a few of these next coming episodes. I actually have one I'm recording tomorrow. So we'll actually have, that's why I have 105 in mind. We actually have 4 recorded. Let me talk just briefly about each one, kind of tease these, and you can kind of get an idea of what this might look like. It's going to evolve as it's already evolved the last few months, defining what building is and how we might structure it and what it'll look like. But let's just dive into these. So the first one, like I just talked about, software. It's about how to introduce a feature in software. So that one's very, very interesting. The next one is we dive into the culinary world and talk about building a food business, whether it's a restaurant. Well, we talked a lot about food trucks. And this person, that's what they do. They actually help people build these things, do these things. So there's still that component. She's done it herself and she's teaching others how to do it. They got a whole program around that, but we get into the nuts and bolts of how do you get a food truck? That was one of my questions. Like, are they just laying around? Where do you get? How do you wrap it? Like, you see, if you've ever seen a food truck, which most of us probably have, I would hope so, unless you're on like Mars or something. They're like, they always have this beautiful outside wrap, like with the ethnic foods, whatever they sell or whatever. And like, where's that come from? How is that, and we talked about how you design the inside of it and what you need. And, but then also the kind of maybe the legal side, we touched on that a little bit. So there's that. And that's more of it's a product in that it's food you're selling, right? But I really tried to drill down into those fundamentals and what that whole process is like. Then we have a gentleman on that I briefly mentioned that we were talking about his past, and he 30 years ago with his wife, they started buying and selling properties. Commercial, they got into, the why they moved away from residential and got into commercial properties and what type of commercial properties, and then and that's where I got kind of stuck for a while. But the whole goal of the episode was to get to what they're doing today in the last 15 years, which was buying and selling digital properties. So that was, that's another thing, but how to do that, right? The nuts and bolts of how to, I ask why a lot, like, why did you do that? Like, how do you do that? What do you need to do that? What skills do you need in that case? Like, what is the number one skill that everyone that wants to buy and sell websites or businesses, website, domain, all that, somebody's business online, what's the number one skill he recommends? You'll find out when you listen to that episode. I think that might be 203. Look for that one. And then I just recorded one where we talked about building courses. Digital courses. And this is a person that's had 20 plus years building courses. He started actually in a university building one of the first for a university, one of their first online courses or programs. And what that was like, it was very fascinating, like how terrible it was. And what he's learned though, transitioning and building courses online and then helping others do it. And what are the fundamentals of that? How can you create a successful course? And what metrics should you actually be focused on? All about building, all about their story. All four of those talk about their story and how they got started and how that colors what they do today. And then Matt's here trying to circle back. The courses one, I had to circle back a lot. These, some people love to talk and they get passionate and excited about what they do. And again, I'm here to kind of let people be in their flow, but like, okay, so this is what we've covered. Now I try to keep them on the rails now, right? Now I think it's going to be great. I actually really love this idea and this structure because it gives me a framework in my head. Like, I can do an episode, whether it's solo or guest, in my sleep now, right? It's been 200. It took me a while though, because if you're starting out, if you're just podcasting, you're starting out and you're kind of fumbling and you're like, this is hard. You got to really think about stuff. It's almost like, going when you become a salesperson at first, you go to someone's house, sitting across the kitchen table, and which I have done, by the way. I've had that kind of career. But when you first start doing it, you're just all into your, process and what to say and all that stuff. So even with podcasting, but over time, what happens is you eventually forget about that. You can actually just do the selling and just be natural and think about actually building a relationship here and all the other things that actually help you sell something. But you get too much into the tactics and what you're same with podcasting. It's something that, has really evolved over time where now it's like, I will tell a guest, I'm like, don't worry about it. I'll guide you through the process. I will just naturally know. I know time-wise, like I get a feel for where we are, and I'll start looking at the clock. And I know where to look for that landing strip, the off ramp, I always call it, right? I know that after 30 minutes, 35, 40 minutes, we need an off ramp. Okay. How are we going to exit? So I'm thinking about that but it's just natural now. It's just, I know we're going to start with the story. We're going to do this and they're going to boom, boom, boom. But within that, it's just a simple framework. Within that, It's chaos. But now with this, I feel like that is another part of that framework that can keep the conversation more focused and zeroed in on the actual building, and still have those little side quests, things that we get into to have fun. We'll still have a lot of fun, and I want to make sure I pull out the personalities and maybe share my personality a little bit, but be my authentic self. But at the same time, we're going to just, it's going to be a much better zeroed in, locked in framework. So we're going to see how that goes. This is season 2. There could be a season 3 right around the corner. We never know. We'll see how it goes. But I am super excited about it. I've had so much fun doing the first 200, including this one right here. Hopefully I hit record. No technical problems anymore. But it's been fun. I've met so many great people. I've talked to people. The beautiful part about having your own podcast is you get to talk to people you normally wouldn't have a conversation with, you wouldn't connect with in any other way, in any other capacity. There's no reason I would talk to half these people, right? But I do. And there's always something beneficial that comes out of it. But at the end of the day, it's all about you, the audience. Forget what I get out of it. I enjoy just talking about this. I mean, I talked about what I get out of it, but what my hope is, I want to create a quality program that people want to tune into weekly or periodically, maybe on social media where we post our clips and you just like to see those clips come in, and that's your whole thing. Maybe you watch us on YouTube, or maybe you're on Spotify or Apple Music or podcasts, whatever it's called. Whatever it is, maybe you just randomly once in a while see us pop up and you tune in. But when you do, I want you to have a great experience. I want you to know what to expect. Now I think this might help you as well. And I'm hoping, it's my instincts kicking in a little bit. I'm hoping, because I know how powerful niching down is, or finding that vertical, or finding that thing that, that you can attract the audience that you want to attract because you're narrow enough. People know what to expect. I'm hoping that will help, because now you'll know when I tune into season 2 of The Builders, we're going to be talking about building something. And I hope that a lot of you, like me, enjoy listening to how people build things. Anyway, thanks for tuning in, whether you're tuning in for the first time or been along for the whole ride. Thank you very much. I appreciate all of you. I appreciate you. I appreciate all of it, the whole experience. It's been a blast, and I hope you will join me in the second season. It's going to be just as much fun, but hopefully we'll stay on the rails a little bit more, and you'll know a little bit better what to expect. All right. Until next time, we'll see you in the new season. That's all for today's episode. I hope you enjoyed that. Again, please subscribe if you haven't already, and give us a thumbs up if we deserve it. Now a word from our sponsor, my agency, Unified Web Design. We build custom websites, features, we maintain websites, we work with agencies to fulfill their web design and development needs, and more. If you are interested in our services or are looking for an agency to work with as a partner to build awesome sites for your clients, feel free to reach out to me at unifiedwebdesign.com. There's a handy contact me link at the top. Fill out that form and it will open a ticket, and that ticket will find its way to me. Thanks for joining me today. We'll see you next time.